Welcome to the Death Talk podcast. The vision for this podcast is to break the culture of silence surrounding death and dying. I'm your host, Lisa Murray. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Death Talk podcast. This is Lisa Murray, and today I am talking with Trisha Barker. She had a really amazing near-death experience in her 20s. She was in a really bad car accident, and I love her whole story and what happened to her, and I just love her vibe. She's written a book called Angels in the OR, and we're going to talk to her today. And by we, I mean me, but you're with me, man. You're like right there with me. And I wanted to let you know that in the very beginning, it was on Zoom. And for some reason, my audio sounds crazy. It's like, like robot sounding choppy. But I'm going to leave it in there because I just have a little quick intro for her. And then for the rest of the interview, it's fine. But just in the beginning, my audio sounds a little crazy. So thank you for looking past that. Tricia has an annual online near-death experience summit happening July 23rd to the 25th, and you can sign up for free on her website, which is TrishaBarkerNDE.com. And she's going to have a lot of the speakers live on her YouTube channel to answer questions about the afterlife, mysticism, intuition, sound healing, energy healing, unity consciousness, spiritual healing from narcissistic abuse, personal empowerment, and much more. She's asking everyone to subscribe to her YouTube channel because she'll be giving lots of updates there about the event. One of the speakers speaking is David Ditchfield. And you may remember I interviewed David as like my second interview in this podcast. So I'm excited. You can go hear what he's up to and any new insights he may have, and maybe even ask him a question live during the online summit. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed speaking with her. Okay, I just want to welcome my wonderful guest today, Trisha Barker. I'm very excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so excited to talk with you. This is going to be fun.
Yes. So one thing that drew me to you was, of course, first off was the near-death experience that you had. That's how I initially saw you and found you. But what I really like is your relatability, that you've been through stuff and that you continue to go through stuff and you kind of weave that in through your story. And I love that because sometimes some of the stories I read, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I relate to them before, during, or after.
Yeah, practical spirituality is like a theme of mine right now. How can you take these messages from the other side, these messages of oneness and love being the only thing that matters, and apply it to this world where sometimes those messages seem out of touch?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I originally, when I was like in my early 20s, when I originally started studying near death experiences, it was because I just all of a sudden out of the blue started fearing death. And so I started researching, and that was the only thing that kind of calmed me down a little bit because I like the fact that it was everybody's different backgrounds. It wasn't one particular belief system that would have a similar experience. And then along the way, and then I've lost some very important people in my life. And then that knowing about near death experiences or learning about new ones always helped calm me down when I start worrying about the people that I love. And also just throughout life, just thinking about like, what am I doing? I really want to make sure that what I'm doing is important and that matters, and not just to somebody's judgment, but to just, I want to make sure I'm giving back to the world somehow with whatever unique gifts that I have. So that's what I love about your near death experience. And I can't wait for the listeners to hear your story. So I just want to say, maybe you can just tell your story first and then I can ask some questions after. Does that sound good?
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I love what you said that, near-death experiences definitely calm people's fear of death because a lot of times we're so stuck in our physical body and very attached to it. I mean, that's how most of us go through life. And I had many fears of death before I had this near-death experience. And even 25 years out of it, I'm very much in the physical again. So, yeah, we worry about getting sick, we worry about pain, we worry about this body that's carrying us through. But I think the jump to that beautiful space is really calming for people. And so I'm always grateful to tell the story. Would you like me to jump right in?
Yes, yes, please do.
Yeah, so I was 22 and agnostic and kind of afraid of death when I had this car wreck on my way to run the Austin 10K, and I was about to graduate. So I was a month away from graduation. This was about this time of year in 1994. When I realized that my back was broken in 3 places, I freaked out because I lost, feeling in my leg and my left leg, and all I thought was, "Oh my god, I don't want to go through life without mobility. This is gonna be horrifying. I'm not gonna graduate this year." Everything was focused on the physical. Eventually, I was taken into emergency spinal surgery, and my body flatlined at some point, but before it flatlined, my spirit lifted up out of my body and I felt so relieved. So all that fear of death was instantly gone. I mean, in the second that I left my body, this did not feel like a dream. This was me watching surgery and watching my body there, and my spiritual self or my soul just looked at the body and thought, wow, that's bloody. Didn't realize surgery was that bloody. And then the next thing that I saw were these 2 amazing light beings. I didn't even know what to call them. I mean, like, I struggled for a long time. Are these angels? Were they aliens? Were they just intelligent beings? All I know is that they're about 9 feet tall and they have this light that communicates and also sends healing. So it did 2 things at one time. The light communicated many words and feelings all at one time through telepathy. Telepathy seems to be the medium in which we communicate with because, we don't have eyes. We have just vision that sees everything at once. We don't have time. We have experiences that happen and kind of unflower, kind of like the way a flower just blooms. These experiences just happen. So, what happened next was the angels basically kind of slowed down communication and said, "Watch this." And they sent this light through the surgeons and into their hands and filled up my entire body. And I knew that this light meant that the bone fragments would be picked out of my spine. I would walk. And I laughed, if you can laugh as a spirit. I mean, I just felt the humor of it all because I thought, wow, these neurosurgeons are brilliant. Do they realize that they are being assisted from these light beings? And how are they going to handle it when I tell them about it? Because I knew I'd tell them. And I knew that, that they probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I thought it was fascinating. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." And it was something in 94 as a 22-year-old that I had never thought about. I mean, yeah, I grew up in a religious home and I'd heard the word angels and thought about them protecting children, but I didn't think of them in this way as these incredible beings. So that was the first part of my near death experience. And then the monitor flatlined. And I remember thinking, wow, how are they going to revive me? This is just bizarre. My back is opened up. I don't want to see this. And I left the operating room. The spirit can just simply go through walls. And I went into this corridor and I saw a vending machine, and my stepdad was getting a candy bar out of this vending machine. And was at that time was one of those vegans who didn't eat any milk products. He didn't, he'd like yell at you if you had a Diet Coke. And, it was just, he was so intense about food. So I remember chuckling seeing him get this candy bar and thinking, uh-huh. So you're not perfect. You eat this candy bar. And that was about as far as I took it, other than thinking, I don't know him that well. Hope he's good to my mom. Bye. And then I flew out over the night sky. That moment of seeing my stepdad, though, became a verifiable incident. Those are called veridical perception and near death experiences. And it basically proves that consciousness continues on, at least for a time after death. And so I knew that later that researchers loved that element of my story, but that wasn't the important part to me. What was important to me is the fact that when my stepdad came back to the waiting room with that candy bar, my mom and dad were on their knees praying and really freaked out because they were certain I died, and they were praying that I live. And then later, I told them, I said, well, I did die at that moment because I saw him get that candy bar. And so to me, that was the more important part, is that we all have a psychic bond to our loved ones. And many people across the globe have felt when a loved one has passed. And that was confirmation to me that my parents felt it. And then I also, later in the story, I did hear their prayers. But the next part that happened was I was just flying, and Lisa, I was so at peace. I didn't feel any fear. It was like I'd just become a bird or something, and I was flying over the night sky, and I was like, wow, this is fun. This is just exciting. Here I am looking down at Austin, and I thought about everyone I'd known in my life up until that point, and I just basically sent good wishes to them all, like, hey, have a great life, enjoy it, case I don't come back, just really enjoy that cappuccino and that that gin and tonic or whatever it is. And there was this sense of just freedom and joy. And the next thing that happened, a lot of people talk about a tunnel. I just kind of transitioned quickly into this night sky. A lot of near death experiencers talk about how these pictures from space mean a lot to them. I don't know if I was that far, but I was beginning to get pretty far out into the stars, where there were bits of light, and then there were just like lots of stars. And I felt, though, a different type of light coming toward me, which felt like intelligence. And this intelligence seemed to be communicating many things all at one time, like love is all that matters. Be like a little child, remind them to go to nature. And these things slowed down. They were, again, like telepathic downloads, but they were imprinted on my soul as if this is the truth that I needed to hang on to and remember. And then I saw my life, almost like a movie screen across the stars, just different parts of my life flash in front of me, as if this intelligent light, maybe God, as some people might say, or creator, was just showing me what I'd done, what was right, what was maybe something that needed to be amended. And at 22, I wasn't a bad person. I was insecure. I, was experimenting with drugs in college. I was partying a lot. I was materialistic and cliquish, but I wasn't mean to people. I wasn't a bully. And, but what I was judgmental. And so that's what I saw, that I was missing out on the beauty of people's souls because I was judging their intelligence level. Did they go to college? Did they wear the same clothes as I did? Did they listen to the same music? And all of that was just so unimportant. Like that's a juvenile, I guess, way to look at people. And I saw into their hearts and souls, and I thought, ah, that's the truth. Who are they at their core? And this couple that I saw in particular had prayed for me because they thought I was depressed. And then my judgmental self didn't think that they were cool enough to be my friends. And I thought, oh, I've really got to change. I've got to go back, and I've got to see people's hearts and pick better people to be my friends, or use a different set of criteria for who I let into my life, and that the heart of people and the soul of people is the most important thing. And so I just got it. I was like, I'll be better. And moved forward from that point into this landscape that was so beautiful. Like, if you can imagine a pasture that had no dead grass, the sky was just immensely blue, that everything about it was just pure and lovely. That's, to me, it kind of looked like a holding place. Some people would call that heaven, but to me, it looked like, I don't know how to describe it other than it was just created for me, as if my grandfather created the scene because it was somewhat familiar from my childhood, and that he was the only person who was dead at that time. And he looked very young. I hardly recognized him because he looked like he was in his late 30s, and his eyes were just beaming with light, and his skin just glowed, and he looked amazing, probably better than he did in life because he was in perfection as well. So just as the grass was in perfection, he was as well. And the message seemed to be that nothing ever really dies. It's all restored. It's beautiful. It's perfect in this place. And he looked at me with deep unconditional love. I wanted to spend time with him, but he also turned to me at some point and looked at the light, which I knew was the light of God, and said, "You can stay here with me or you can continue on." And so I was very excited at that point. I was like, "Of course, I want to continue on. I can come back for you, love you, but I'm going towards this light of God." And I just flew towards that light and I felt people's prayers. And that's when I felt prayers as if they were wind. And people often ask me, do prayers work? Why is it that someone prays for one thing and another person prays for another thing? Well, I felt the prayers. That's what I have to say about it. So if someone dies and you prayed for them to live, at least their soul hears what you said and they can feel the emotion attached to it. So I knew if someone was just praying out of necessity or routine, or if they were really praying sincerely and didn't want me to die. And I could just tell, what people's prayers were about. I could feel them. So when you pray, just pray with love and pray with good energy. And that's what a soul can feel, that's what a person can feel on some level as well. Does it change the outcome? I think my outcome was predestined, to be honest. So whether someone prayed or not, that was just communication, but it was important to my soul. So yeah, pray, send good energy in this world. But the next part of this was just the best part of the entire experience. I felt so happy and at peace and safe to love as I got closer to that light of God. I'd never felt that good. There'd always been a level of anxiety that I dealt with because, I grew up in poverty and had an abusive upbringing and had survived a lot. And the world seemed unsafe. It seemed like a place that I needed to be on guard and wary and on the lookout for danger. And that's how I spent most of my life. And then in college, I was having fun, but kind of numbing some of that emotional pain. Here, I had no emotional pain. I was loved completely. All the harm that had been done to me was gone. Love was all that truly mattered, and I was loved. I was fine. So was everyone else if they just could be in that place next to God. And I knew that in that place, all was well. So I really did not want to return. That was the at that point I thought, okay, no, I'm done with that existence. That's kind of rough down there. This feels really good. This was like a spa where your every bit of your needs are taken care of and you want for absolutely nothing. So why are you going to return to something that's a struggle? I was like, no, nope, staying here. And that's when the light just stopped me and said, "No, look down." And I saw this river, and there were all these souls, and some of them were connected to the light of God, and some of them had this shadow over them. And from that vantage point, it just looked like the shadow could be fear, that kind of like A Course in Miracles, that there's either love or there's fear. People are either operating from love or operating from fear. It looks so simple, and I thought, well, fear can be depression, it can be negative thoughts, it can be personality disorder. It can be many things, but it's just something that takes you away from that flow of light and that flow of divinity. And I was told I would work as a teacher, not necessarily as a spiritual teacher, but an actual teacher. And that's when I was like, oh, no, 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 definitely not going to do that. So, yeah, come on, you know me. I grew up poor, don't want to struggle for money. This is a horrible idea. And as I argued, yeah, I was actually egotistical enough to argue with God that my near death experience ended at that point. So it was like a dark wind just enveloped me and I was thrown back into my body. It was powerful and profound in many ways, even after it ended. And, there were those first moments back in the recovery room. I immediately knew that I'd had a near death experience. So there was no part of me that forgot this experience or questioned it. There are some near death experiencers who question their experience, or it takes a long time for them to talk about it, but for whatever reason, I'd heard about them, I knew what had happened, and I was driven to express this as soon as possible, even though I was on, I was coming out of a major surgery and I was on morphine and in the hospital for 9 days.
At this point in the interview, for some reason, our connection dropped. She continued to be recorded, but I disappeared into the internet shadows. I don't know what happened. So when we reconnected, this was the second part of our conversation. Enjoy. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's such an amazing story. And I love it. I love that a couple things that pop out to me, and I'm going to jump around, is I love that you didn't call them angels at first, and then you called them light beings and different things. That's kind of like me too. Like I like avoid the actual words or words that would, oops, sorry, words that would have any kind of religious connotation kind of
Yes.
thing. Did you feel that? Is that why you resisted calling them? I mean, it really doesn't matter what they're called, really, at the end of the day.
Right.
But
Yeah, at the end of the day, I ended up calling my book Angels in the OR, but for so long, I just called them light beings and people would ask me were they aliens? I was like, all I know is that they were incredibly intelligent beings that could communicate with telepathy and were larger than human beings. There was this sense of higher intelligence. So they were beings with a higher intelligence, and that's what struck me about them.
were they like human looking or?
Yeah, that's a good question. They were sort of, they were 9 feet tall, androgynous looking, longish hair, and the cloaks that they wore seemed to be just energy more than anything else, like light energy, like this flowing light energy. And I didn't see wings, but um, what was most important was the intelligence that came from their eyes. And that's really just what hit me, that I wasn't afraid because they were there. And I began to understand clearly that there's a door of perception, that we're living in this 3D reality and they were part of a different reality. And I was too at that moment. And so they were helping me adjust to being out of body. And that much I knew.
Do you think they were like maybe your individual spirit guides, or maybe like spirit family people, or were they more like a general vibe? I know you're just basing it off of feeling, but what do you think?
Yeah. So I think that we each have angels, like I think every person has angels. Um I've heard different near death experiencers say different things. Like some people felt this affinity for them, some people felt at one with them. I felt really in awe of them because I had never considered that such intelligent beings were helping me on my path. If I knew that, I maybe would have used them a little bit more. And it's always a good reminder, like as I go through life stumbling and making errors, like, okay, sometimes just get out of Tricia and ask for help, from these higher beings that maybe have an answer that I don't currently have.
Yeah, I that really stood out to me because all along I've always thought, yeah, there's spirit guides, there's my spirit angel, whatever you call them, they're all around me. And then I don't know what it is, but the last few years I've really started to think about it like in a different way, like really like they're right there. They're here right now. Like they're with me. What do I think about that? And I don't know if that's my guidance wanting me to start paying more attention to it, but yeah, that's just something that instead of it being like an idea and something kind of bigger, like, oh, I can pray to these angel energies or whatever, I'm really seeing it as like more like a personal, they see, they're right here with me all the time. Did you get that feeling like that they're always with you whenever you need it?
Yes, yes, and that they can work through my surgeons or a therapist, or they can work through me to help others, that energy can go both ways. So if you go to a physician and you're worried about something, ask that your angels work through that person, to make the right diagnosis, to help you in that encounter, or to at least give you the right referral, that there is this participation of energy from the other realm, and that's what kind of hit me. And so yeah, that it we have to keep reminding ourselves that they're there, like you said, that they're truly accessible, because it's so easy to forget.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of the whole amnesia of being here is like we just we're supposed to kind of, I think we're supposed to kind of feel alone. So we find our way back to not feeling alone. So it's the dichotomy we're always living in, is like, we're wanting to, not know the answer, but then rediscover it or something. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where I go with that in my own journey, because I, I don't know. I lost some people that were really close to me, and I had a lot of after death communications from them. My brother and then a really good friend of mine are the two main ones, and then my grandfather also. I connected with you on that as well. I was really close with my grandfather, and he passed away when I was 16. And after he died, about a year after he died, I had reoccurring dreams where he was alive, and he would just, appear different places to me, like in a restaurant. And then I'd look back and he'd be gone. Or he'd walk up to me and I'd tell him, I thought you're supposed to be dead. And then he'd just smile and walk away, But, and also with my friend who was killed in 2012, a lot of the dreams I had with him, I mean, every single one. And that's what makes me know that in my heart, it's a visitation and not a dream, is he doesn't talk using his mouth when we communicate, but it's different. It's like what you said, telepathy. And it's just through being around each other and just conveying information. Same with my brother. Yeah.
Exactly, like, that's what I tell people, like, when you have a dream like that, that is a contact dream because our unconscious opens up in sleep and we're easier to contact that way, and it really it's just often a hug or energy or telepathy or just that person standing in front of you, just reminding you that they're not gone, and that's a real contact, so that's awesome that you've had that.
Yeah. I've had a lot of that. And also, I have a lot of flying dreams too. And it reminds me of how you describe the flying. And I could always tell my spiritual health based on the type of flying dream I had, although I haven't had a flying dream in a long time. But sometimes I would start to fly and I would go too high up and I would go into space, and it would scare me because I'm like, I can't tell where I am anymore. Um, but it was beautiful, but it was scary to me. And then other times I'd be flying really fast, but like low to the ground, like 4 feet off the ground, really fast. I'm like, this is not fun at all.
I love that. I know exactly what you mean because, like, right after the near death experience, I had beautiful lucid dreams because maybe my soul just remembered how to fly and experience that. But then years later, I was trying to have them, and this was so ridiculous. So I had a jetpack on, and I was like just barely above the cars, not going very fast. And I was like, you're not in a good place, girl.
Yeah, isn't it weird? You can kind of tell. Like, I don't know how, even now that I'm thinking about it, why did I think of it that way? But to me, the ease of the flying, like the combination of my ability to carry myself through the flying. What was my purpose of flying? Where was I going? Was I okay with it? Did I have too much fear? Was I out of control? Like, yeah, it's interesting how that relates to your state of mind or state of health, I guess, during that time.
Yeah, because how easily do we embrace freedom, really? Freedom from the body, freedom from, there's these two different parallels. There's love and there's freedom there. And so freedom is exciting and wonderful, and love is what still keeps us attached to our loved ones and to, the experience of living here. And these polar opposites, they have to be balanced somehow. Like you have to, I guess, as in one of those dreams, you have to be fine with freedom.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna think about that. I like that. That's true. Um, so I want to go back to the car accident when you were 22. One of the things I couldn't get past when my friend died was the fact he was actually run over by a train, and that was very traumatic. I couldn't get past the physical part. Um, when you were in your accident, did you have any, while it was happening, do you think you were starting to kind of disassociate from your body a little bit, or did you feel the pain, or like what was that like in terms of your spiritual experience with that physical part?
Yeah, the physical part I write a lot about because it was traumatizing. And although I didn't feel everything, so what I felt immediately right after the wreck was my body was super hot. And I remember just sweating and, shock hit. And I was slumped over to one side. And then the mind, goes through all the fear. So I was 17 hours of waiting in the ER and getting
Oh,
MRIs and CAT scans and all that stuff that they do. And some of it was necessary, but some of it was unnecessary because I was a college student without health insurance, and I overheard one of the nurses say to another nurse, "He's on the golf course. He's not coming in to operate on her because she doesn't have insurance." And they said this close enough to me to where I started screaming at that doctor and the nurses and everyone. And I just got so angry. I was like, I'm not someone you can throw away. I deserve surgery like
good.
anyone else. Like I was
Yeah.
pissed.
I'm so glad you did that. Oh my gosh.
And luckily, a surgeon who had been off duty, this she was 35, and just young, and she was overworked, and she looked at my chart, and just told her that I was probably going to kill myself if I couldn't walk, and so she better operate on me. And then we started talking, and she kind of looked at me when I said that, and said, "Well, I've been on duty for 40 hours. I actually have to have dinner and I have to have some rest before I can operate on you. I won't be any worth anything to you if I don't get some rest." And so she had to go home. She took the case, but she went home, ate dinner, took a nap, and then came back and operated on me. So the pain just got unbearable at times, and just but I wasn't out of my body that whole time. I was just miserable in it for 17 hours, but I didn't
Oh,
probably feel everything, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, um that was something I couldn't get past, and I took a nap one day a couple days after he died, and I was on the train tracks where he was, and it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was taken there. And I looked around, and I had been there before because we used to live together it was in San Francisco, and we used to go to that train station. And I didn't even know that that was the train station. Later on it all started to come together, but anyways, I was standing on the train station. I could feel the wind coming of the train, and right when the train would have hit me, I like left my body and I went up through the ceiling, and it was like a feeling of exuberation. It was like the
Yeah.
best feeling. And as I was feeling that, I sat up in my bed and I said his name. Like it was almost like air coming out of a flute or a clarinet. And the note that it played was his name. And I went, Derek. And I felt that feeling of like leaving the body. And I think he brought me there to show me
Mm.
that he left his body. And maybe he was connected to it because he lived, for like a few, like, I don't know, a few hours. They were trying to do blood transfusions and stuff. But maybe that he didn't experience the
No.
main part of it. So
Yeah, and I think had my accident been that bad, it would have I would have left early. I think I have this feeling that most people do with instant trauma like that. It's just so shocking that the soul leaves. But a broken back is not that complicated. How I actually died was once they opened me up, I had internal injuries, and so I bled to death on the operating table. So the real
oh.
trauma happened because they opened me up.
Oh my gosh. So that explains all the extra blood everywhere.
Yes, yes.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, I get this feeling that people who die in plane crashes and train accidents like that leave soon. I was actually in a plane that was going down one time, like we lost both engines, and I was certain that my soul, if we hit the ground, would have left before. Like I was holding the guy's hand, and we were, I said, "Hey man, just pray. We're gonna go to the light. It's all gonna be fine." I didn't really think I was gonna die this soon, but this is what happens. This is what's meant to happen. And it was just like calm through the whole thing. So
Oh my
yeah, it
gosh.
really does take away your fear of death.
Okay, so that happened after your near-death experience,
Yes,
obviously.
yes.
Yeah. Oh my god, you were all chill. You're like, "You guys don't worry about it. There's a light. It's fine. Let's just relax." Everyone's looking like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, they're screaming and crying. The guy next to me, a grown man, was like, "But I have kids.
Oh.
I don't want to die."
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so then when you came to in the hospital, I mean, well, another thing I wanted to ask you, first of all, with the life review, did you experience any other people in the life review, their feelings? Because I read that a lot, like where you experience it from their perspective, how you would treat them or something like that. But it doesn't sound like you really treated people poorly. So maybe you didn't have that heavy of a experience like that. Did you?
That couple that I mentioned, they were the main people that I saw, and the what I saw was that they didn't judge me, even though I judged them. They just thought, this girl seems sad. Let's include her in our prayers.
Oh.
And
And
I
you were
was
like, ew.
I was like, you don't wear Doc Martens or listen to Nirvana. You're not cool like me.
Oh my gosh. There's so many people like that in the world. That's great. So you can feel like, wow, they were really genuine and I was not like a
Yeah.
good, like, yeah. Wow, that's
Yeah.
good.
And I could just feel that, they didn't understand why I didn't talk to them, and that would have made work more fun, so they just assumed I was shy and depressed. They didn't know that, that I just didn't think they were cool enough for me, but but I was shy and depressed too. So that was, it was all of it.
Right. It's all mixed together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've always felt that way when I was younger, when people were a certain way or whatever. I always felt like someone was telling me one day they'll understand. One day they'll know. They'll understand why they were like that. I mean, even when I was in grade school, I remember thinking that. So, like in terms of I was probably the non, cool hippie. I wasn't hippie, but like I was the non-cool person that somebody else judged. And I could feel it, but I also knew, like, I wasn't mad. I didn't hold grudges against people because I knew that one day they'll understand what they're doing and they'll realize and they'll feel bad about it.
Yeah, that's almost, yeah, that's reminds me of they know not what they do. Like there is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sense of people don't know when they're coming from darkness or just conditioning or their own fears. They don't realize we're also self-focused, especially in America. I think that's the big problem here, that why it's so important to get out of yourself is you're happier the minute you do. Like the minute,
Yeah,
that focus is not just on me, 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 then suddenly you realize, oh, it's kind of fun to be connected to others.
yeah. Because you're really looking for relief from your own self-judgment. So you're thinking if somebody outside of me can just get their stuff together, then I can be relieved of that topic that's being brought up by looking at them. And that's making me think about my own shortcomings or that I think I have. And so it's causing stress. And so you're just, I think that's what it is. And so if you get out of that whole loop of thinking, like you're saying, and just connect with people, you're like, oh God, finally free of that inner critic.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask the lights. I love that when you look down or you were shown the lights of people with the shadows over them, and then how you brought that into your teaching with kids or young people, and really you wanted to help people find their light and find the thing that lights them up. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I love that. That's so practical too, but it's also beautiful and spiritual as well.
Yeah, so to me, light always seemed like if someone felt bad about themselves, and a lot of kids did, like they struggled to find anything that they did well. And so I always asked them, hey, tell me a story, write about this, about a time in your life where you did something and you accomplished something and you felt good about yourself. And sometimes they struggle, but they will pull something out like, well, I fixed this car one time. And I was like, write about it. You can start there. So some of it's just kind of self-help motivational stuff that helps people feel good about themselves. Sometimes it's a real life purpose. In college now, I teach at a community college. I taught junior high and high school before, but now sometimes students go, oh my god, I'm going to become a speech pathologist. I get it. Or oh, I'm going to go into the Peace Corps and then I'm going to do this. And they have these ideas that come on, and you just see the light come on in them, like, oh, everything's coming together. And that doesn't even have to be, oh, I had a spiritual awakening. It's just I feel better about myself. I'm in the flow of something good. So it can be that practical, or it can be a spiritual connection at other times. They can be a healing journey that a student starts or begins in school.
That's so important, and I wish it was more mainstream because, I'm a filmmaker, and in my other podcast, it's called I Have Dreams, Damn It. It's about like remembering that you have something else that you really wanted to do, whatever that other thing is. And so in pursuing film, it's, I've always had to have another job and whatever most people do. And I'm so good at things and I get pulled in that next thing I know, I'm like, office manager and top executive assistant. And like, I like excel so much in that I stop and go, wait a minute, I have dreams, damn it. Like there's something else I'm here to do. And so, I really feel like I have to almost be reminded of like the artist in me and the things that I want to put in the world. But since my friend and my brother died, not so much. It's much more immediate. It's much more on the surface. I was very traumatized by their deaths. And also I was going through a burnout in my career. So, it was very traumatizing. But I do think that that's the way we can like achieve, I don't know, world peace or something, is if we can just remind people of that thing that they really want to do, because it's almost like they're spiritual instructions of what they're meant to do. And I think people forget, they get practical. Um, I always say it's like a rock clearing business. I'm on a path, I'm on my spiritual path, and then there's a bunch of rocks blocking the path. And then I start removing the rocks, and then I'm good at that. So then I start a rock clearing business, and then I'm there for like 30 years. And then I go, wait a minute, what was I doing here? Oh, yeah, that's right. I was walking down the path. So I get back on the path. And it's just that being reminded and, remember like there's something else, there's something else. And I love that it's not little at all, but all the people in our lives that can remind us of that. And if it's a teacher in school, in college or high school or whatever, that's huge work, because that's reminding people to look at that path, look at that thing that maybe your family never talked to you about. No one in my family knew what to do with me. They were like, my dad was an electrical engineer, like they didn't know anything about art. He's like, I don't know, it's not really realistic. I'm like, okay.
I love that, because there are so many students who were in deep pain and deep trauma that I helped. But I always thought, yeah, some of my students just need a little bit of something from me. They have a talent that no one else in their family has, and they just need a little encouragement about how
Yeah.
to explore that and how to bring that to life. And so it always seemed like if I was open to it, I could be used from the other side to help anyone, at any time. And that was my vision. I was so happy. Like when I look back, I was never unhappy in the classroom. The other parts of my life were a train wreck at times, but the classroom was just fun because I was in motion, I was in the light, and I was spreading that light. And then, it took me a while, but eventually I made the connection that okay, maybe I need to have that in the rest of my life, in my relationships and my friendships and my, because I just thought, here's my mission from heaven.
Yeah.
Gotta go
Yeah.
teach. And so, but then I really loved it. I mean, it was just a ton of fun. And so, yeah, that's been the spiritual growth for me is like, how do you include the light in everything that you do?
Absolutely. Do you feel like as you get further away from the NDE that, I mean, what do you do to stay connected to it? How do you stay connected to your, because what if the lesson or whatever you were supposed to do originally, what God showed you, that you've done that and now you're supposed to shift off of that? Like, how do you stay connected to those turns without having another NDE?
That's a really good question because, I felt guided for 20 years to be in the classroom. Then I did hear a message that my mission was done. And that really kind of freaked me out because I thought, well, am I going to die? What do I do? Now I'm back here at square one. And, I keep teaching because I do enjoy it, but I do other things. I interview near death experiencers and I've written a book and, I'm thinking about the next thing. And I think the key is if I feel like I'm helping people as a medium, if I feel like this is really helping them heal and connect with someone because the you described like what you went through, like that's traumatizing for so many people to lose a close friend and they need someone to talk to, whether it's a grief counselor, minister, medium, whatever that might be, that's proactive in their own self-care to reach out to someone. And if I'm trusted to be that person, then I want that guidance to come through me to help someone. So basically, I came to the conclusion that if it's creating art, if it's interviewing someone, if it's being interviewed, if it's working as a medium, whatever it is, as long as I'm in that flow of, hey, if this helps someone, great.
I love that about your YouTube channel, because you're really using it to not just interview other people who have had near death experiences, which is really cool that you have had one and then you're interviewing people that have one, but then you're also sharing what you've learned. And I love that. I think it's a great venue for you, I guess you could say, a virtual venue. But yeah, I love your YouTube channel. It's really good.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you, and by the way, anyone listening, her Trisha's YouTube channel will be in the show notes on Death Talk podcast. So if you need to go check that, well, it's Trisha Barker, right? Do you have that as youtube.com/Trisha Barker? Is that your channel?
No, it's actually Healed by the Light, but probably if you type my name, Trisha Barker, in there, NDE, there's so many videos. Like there's too
Yeah.
many,
Well, you know what my mom does? Like if she Googles something, first of all, she Googles everything in the world. She talks into her phone. She has a Samsung, and it whatever comes up, she thinks that's your channel, you know? And so she'll just start watching somebody else for a long time. And I go, no, mom, that's like if I use you for example, that's where she was interviewed. That's now somebody else's
Oh,
channel. But your channel does come up on top, but I don't think people know to click on the top thing with the circle that says how many subscribers you have, like all that kind of stuff. I don't think a lot of people don't know that. Um,
yeah. So I just kind of randomly titled it because I didn't know what I would title my book, but I titled it "Near Death Experience Healed by the Light." That was like an early working thing, and honestly, I thought maybe I'd make one video and that would be it. Then all these many years later, there's lots of interviews.
yeah, I think it's great. I love it. I think it's really helping heal a lot of people. And, I mean, I did it so long ago when I first started talking about it, and I'm glad to see it so mainstream and popular now that people are. But I also think this is the same thing I have a problem with everything is that I think people get overwhelmed. And I also think there's people who aren't genuine or have weird messages that maybe aren't coming from the best place. And now it's like we have to use discernment. Whereas before it was more like if someone was talking about this, it was pretty much like this is a real deal thing because it's like they're out on the limb, you know. But now because it is popular, I do feel like, you have to really find the people that you resonate with and try not to give power to the people who are, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? How there's
Oh,
some people on
I,
there and
d-
you're like,
I
what is
do.
going on?
I do. There's an not to discredit anyone, but this is just my discernment when someone has an experience that's very biblical or self-serving in a political way, or if there's some agenda to it, I tend to step back because generally the energy is just, wow, I can't believe this. It was outside of my body and this is what happened. And, there's kind of a shock that a person experiences because, lucid dreaming and out of body experiences are shocking enough. But when you see your dead body, that's a level of disconnection from this experience that, and I know that there are people out there who like a lot of attention, and this is kind of weird thing to, maybe study and do for the sake of attention. I mean, this is not the best path to pick. Like, there's other there's other things to pick. Like you
I
get
know.
attacked a lot as a near death experiencer. So I find it odd that some people would choose, to make one up.
Well, and I also think this is the real thing I'm talking about is I found such healing and calming energy coming from listening to people who've had near death experiences because I feel like it's a universal message of love and that we're okay. Everything's going to be okay. And so when someone puts a fear message into that, that's when I first was like, wait, what's going on? Why would somebody do that? But that's the nature of fear. It's that people want to put it in all these weird places. And you're like, so I would just say anybody listening to this, like if you ever listen to or watch a near death experience and you feel very uneasy or afraid or worried, I just, in my research in all these years, I would just say, just click off of that or stop reading it. Cause I think it's more of a positive thing. I just don't think it's, in any way negative. So I don't know. Just want to
Yeah,
say that.
and even the ones that are tough, like I interviewed Howard Storm, and he had a negative experience and then a beautiful experience. He still offers a lot of hope and a lot of beauty and a lot of connection at the end. So some people are traumatized by his experience, but I agree that if the person speaking is causing you fear, there's just a lot of other places to go to get comfort and to get joy and to get peace. What is it, like every minute 300 hours of YouTube comment content is uploaded? So whenever
Oh,
people attack me or don't like something, like, click away, find
I
your joy.
know. I started on YouTube when it first started doing video blogs, like video diaries of when I was working at Paramount Pictures and just like my journey of paying the bills and trying to do my film. And yeah, it was beautiful and amazing. to have a video of myself talking, and then you see the comments. This is before haters, anyone knew about, all those trolls. Like no one talked about any of that. And I remember I got some negative comments and I was like, that's it. I'm going to delete my account, and I'm so
Oh,
glad I didn't because, years later it's fine.
yeah. Years later, you just keep going and then you just learn to weed those out and you become who you are.
Exactly. Really fast, I want to ask you this question before I forget. When you said you heard a voice that told you you had achieved what you needed to do first, what do you mean by that? Were you meditating? Like, because some people listening to this might feel like there's a shift going on in their life, and I just want to make sure
Yeah, it came
that's
very
explained.
unexpected. I was carrying a salad up some stairs to my office, and kind of like the way I heard in the near death experience, it kind of boomed through me. I just heard the words, "Your mission is complete." And I wanted to
Wow.
cry. I just didn't even understand, but I felt like I had maybe soul contracts with particular students over those 20 years that I was the person that needed to meet them. And if I wasn't there, it wasn't going to happen for whatever reason. My particular upbringing and things I've survived and, how I connected with them. It it felt like a contract. It felt like, okay, I had all these different souls that were going to be changed because of this interaction, and now I was complete. And then I was like, well, so the rest of whatever my life is just gravy. It's just fun. I can do whatever. Like I'm still struggling, Lisa, to be honest. I'm trying to figure it out. But so is everyone else, I guess. If you don't have like a clear directive mission, then you're just going, well, as long as I'm doing good, then I'm on the right track.
Yeah, it is. I think that's the hardest part is just knowing what the guidance is, because we either look too hard for it and we're overlooking just the basics of, well, does it make you feel good? Do you feel lighter when you do it or whatever? Um, or I don't know, we're looking for something big and deep and amazing. And that's not always, I don't know. It is difficult. It is difficult to try to follow that. And I try to see the different things going on in my life as breadcrumbs that lead me back. But I remember in Louise, or wait, not Louise Hayes, that's Heal Your Life. Susan Jeffries, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Did you ever read that book?
Yes,
It's from like a
yes.
long time ago, but it's a classic. Um, I remember in that book, she said, and I don't know if this is still true with computers, but she said that when a plane is flying to Hawaii, they don't go on course really. They're actually always flying off course. And it's only when the alarm goes beep, beep, you're off course, then they go back onto course. And it goes beep, beep, and they go back onto course. It's not like you would think, like, oh, I'm on course and I go directly to Hawaii. It just didn't work like that then. I should look into it and see if they still do that now. But I always thought about that and I thought, I think that's how we are with our guidance, or at least that's how I am, is that I only know sometimes when I'm off. I'll think, oh, this feels gross. I don't like the way I feel right now, or I don't like, something's off. I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling sick. I'm getting too stressed out. And then I know, okay, I got to spend more time with myself or meditate or,
Yeah.
whatever, make a shift, quit the job, move away, go take a vacation, whatever it is.
I love that. That makes total sense to me, just paying attention to yourself inwardly. And yeah, so I set kind of overall goals like, okay, legacy. I want to help traumatized people. I want to help young kids not commit suicide. Like there's some overall reaching goals. I want to make the Rape Crisis Center here in Fort Worth a better place. So, I don't have children. That was one thing I chose not to do because of the severity of my accidents and the rods in my back. And so I think about, well, whatever money I have at the end of my life, I'm going to leave it to the Rape Crisis Center. Like I plan, like what are the things that are important, and then all the steps along the way. Well, that's just whatever it is. It's many things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love what you're doing. I think you're doing great work. And I think sometimes when you're in the media with film or music or books or anything like that, even YouTube, podcasts, it's very one way. A lot of times you don't know for sure who you're touching or what you're doing. You just have to trust, as you know. And I think you're doing great work. I love your channel. I mean, I'm just looking at your YouTube channel right now, Advice for Empaths, and I love it. And I think that that's important. And I think that we need, from someone that's actually experienced a near death experience as well. I think that holds a little bit more weight, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but I just know that it feels like, no, you guys, she knows God. Okay. She was there. And she's
That's
talked to him.
that's cute. Anita Morjani has a new book called Sensitive is the New Strong, and she's a famous
Oh, that's
near-death
good.
experiencer. And a lot of people, it seems like, are moving toward this practical spirituality of, well, how can we, have one foot here on earth and all these messages from the other side and really just enjoy our lives here, but also know that there's such great joy and such great light that can descend into your films and into everything that you do and your relationships, and yet just be here now too.
Yeah. And I think religion has really let a lot of people down. And I think people are looking like, we don't want to, throw everything away, but we need to find something that is resonating as true and can actually help heal people and heal what we're doing here. And I do think there's a big shift happening.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, like, I struggled for a long time because I grew up in the South and, of course, was attacked for this near-death experience because I didn't see a religious figure, and most people don't. They see a light, and, there's been a lot of struggle. I know that there's beautiful, wonderful religious people of all religions, with good hearts and good souls, and yet, it's taken me a long time here just to finally embrace that I'm spiritual, not religious. And this is kind of a silly side story, but someone wished me a happy Easter and asked me what I was doing, just someone at the counter. And I just said, I'm spiritual, not religious. I'm going to take a walk.
Exactly. And you're like, and I don't have kids, so I'm not doing the egg thing. So I don't know. It's just a really pretty day, you know?
I'm going to look at all the people in their pastel clothes and laugh. No, I don't
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I grew up Catholic, but and my grandparents are very Catholic. I wasn't forced to be Catholic, but like my mom, but I like the visuals of it. But I remember being a little kid looking at everybody in church, thinking that's interesting that they need this to feel connected to God. And I really mean that. I don't mean that in like a condescending way. I mean, like everybody has a different way that they connect. And for me, I felt like it was all day, everywhere, sky, nature, animals, people. That's,
Oh,
so I don't
well,
know.
and that's
Yeah.
what it
So,
should be. It really is. Like, my message from the near-death experience was, and this makes a lot of people upset because that's their one link to God. It wasn't remind them to go to the Bible, it was remind them to go to nature. Um, that
yeah.
that's the place where there's a link, where there's a metaphor of how to connect to God, where there's really this, that's a truth we can all agree on in these times that are so, people, especially in the States, are so divided, but we can all agree that nature takes away stress. Like, just
Yeah.
it does.
Well, and we're nature, we're part of that. That's why we resonate. Being in nature kind of brings us back to the right vibration because it's what we are. And I think when we build all these things, it's like it's great and it's cool because we can go really fast and we can do all these different things. But to kind of recalibrate ourselves, we almost have to go back to where we come from, which is, I mean, our bodies, anyways, is nature. The other thing I wanted, just final question is what advice would you have to somebody who is really afraid of death or someone, because this is what I get a lot, is someone who's lost somebody. Um, Maybe the person committed suicide, or maybe they weren't the greatest person, or I don't know, maybe the person who's alive had problems being, maybe they were the mean one or whatever. What advice would you have for someone who's I know that's like I just named like 400 different kinds of people, but just that whole concept of like the difference between what we think is good and bad and all that other stuff, or maybe they're afraid of death. What would you have to say to them?
So, first, to the people who are afraid of death, it's natural to be afraid because you're in your body, but hopefully you can get some comfort from knowing the exhilaration and the happiness and the joy and the detachment that happens once you leave your body. So once you are detached from it, it is possible to not feel fear. And any meditation that you can do, any lucid dreaming, any way that, I mean, I'm not even against people who try mushroom therapy, or do things in that sense to find a connection beyond the body, you will have more peace. But everyone can meditate for 10 minutes a day, and just have greater peace. And over time, there might be a spiritual connection that opens up. You just have to keep at it. And the other part of that, what I know is a medium, and I've, talked to some souls over there who we're pretty sadistic here, and those are tough calls, and kids who've committed suicide. And what I found is that there's a healing and a re-education. So kind of like the life review, and it's from a detached space. So it's not torture, it's not hell from what I've seen. It's more like, hey, you're no longer this person, no longer doing these things. Now look at what your actions did to others, and observe more things that you didn't understand, and observe time from the beginning to the end. And there's like so much education and so much healing possible for that soul and its role that it played. And most of the time, people who, die of a drug overdose or things like that, many times it is just a body disease. It is a disease of the body, and their soul was actually pretty healthy. Like, as soon as they embrace freedom, I found that drug addicts and alcoholics, when they've transitioned, just take to the freedom really easily. They're just flying around. They were ready to be free of that body a long time ago. And there's this sense of just flying in that realm. And there is this sense of, oh, I'm sorry to the people that they left behind, and this sense of sending healing energy. So, whatever, and most relationships are fractured, they're not complete. So, whatever it is that a parent didn't do or a loved one didn't do that left you feeling, or maybe you're just separated in time, in space, and you didn't get to see someone too often. You feel bad about that. They want to fill in that love with the energy from the other side. They want to send us energy that is loving. So that's been like so healing to experience, is that whatever was broken can be healed.
Oh, I love that. Everything you just said just resonated with me as just being truthful or something. It's just, I feel like why would we be here experiencing things if there's some kind of harshness about if somebody colors outside the lines, whether they, do it violently or they do it, just because they're not perfect. And I think that, yeah, I do believe everything's a learning lesson. And I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So I just want to tell everybody again, your book is Angels in the OR: What Dying Taught Me About Healing, Survival, and Transformation. And she has a great YouTube channel, and I will have the link on the show notes. And then also Trisha Barker, NDE.com is your website. And I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I love the work that you're doing. And I look forward to seeing if there's any other bends in the road that come up.
Well, thank you. I loved talking with you too, even though this is just audio. Like, really get your sense of humor and your talent, and it's just fun to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Trisha. Okay, well, thank you, and you have a great day. And then we'll talk to you again in the future, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank my guest today, Trisha Barker. And just a reminder to my listeners that she is having the 2021 Annual Online Near-Death Experience Summit, July 23rd to the 25th. So head over to TrishaBarkerNDE.com to register for free. If you would like more information about this episode, you can head over to deathtalkpodcast.com for show notes. Thanks for listening.